If there's one thing we know about Trump, it's that he's a keen judge of character. He's always paying close attention to the habits and qualities of the people around him. We've all seen him in meetings, razor sharp, laser focused, locking eyes with everyone around him, carefully scrutinizing every word and every gesture, taking the true measure of the men and the soon-to-be fired women who make up his administration. Sure, to you, it looks like he's asleep, but everyone looks like they're sleeping when you're so woke.
It's undeniable at this point. It's an obvious punchline. He's a laughingstock, undeniably, justifiably, but it's also deeply alarming. And it's unprecedented behavior, not just from a sitting American president, but from a leader of anything. And it happened again yesterday, in the middle of the afternoon, during the White House's own press event in the Oval Office. And I cannot articulate clearly enough that cameras are only inside the Oval Office when the White House press officers bring them into the Oval Office. And they only get to stay until the White House press staffers take them out. With cabinet members flanking him, Trump slouched in his chair, either bored or just riveted and incapable of staying awake for that which he found riveting. But we'll go with bored by what his EPA administrator was saying. He just shut his eyes and dozed off in front of the cameras. We'll let you watch.
For so many Americans, clean, beautiful coal is their source of heat, of energy, of warmth, of a job, an economy, a community, a family. There's regulation after regulation after regulation trying to strangulate out of existence coal, to destroy it. Enter President Trump. The Democrats were running for power to sit at this desk and to leverage that power to destroy these communities. Enter President Trump.
He doesn't even stay awake when they talk about him, which is new, for lack of a better word. And we'll let you reach your own conclusion about what this means. Again, whether he's bored or whether he's sick or whether he's tired or whether he's old. But he's definitely not awake at a White House meeting scheduled by the White House, alerted by the White House press office at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. The White House, for their part, they're usually like, yeah, we're corrupt. What are you going to do about it? In this case, that's not their posture. They're completely triggered and like out of their mind about this now viral moment. One of the press officers said, his eyes are literally open. That's true. Like every 11 seconds, they like flutter open. So, you know, he's alive. Trump is 1 week shy of his 80th birthday. He's been caught sleeping more than a handful of times during major public appearances at the White House, including during a meeting with his entire cabinet and a ceremony meant to give out an award for physical fitness. I want to bring in the managing editor of The Bulwark, our contributor Sam Stein, with me at the table, Democratic strategist and Columbia University professor, political analyst Basil Smikle. Sam, I mean, there's an argument, I guess, that if he's asleep, he can't do anything scary. But he seems to obviously have endurance issues, wakefulness issues, alertness issues. And for all of the years of ramming down our throat, wow, he's energetic, he's getting things done, you know, strong and wrong is better than whatever it was, right and not a bully, whatever that political trope was. He's wrong and asleep now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't begrudge an 80-year-old for taking the occasional nap. God knows I take the occasional nap, but I'm not president, and I'm not taking a nap while I have my deputies and my cabinet officials flanked around me telling me how great I am. So it is optically a very odd situation. And then on top of that, to your point, Nicole, this is a guy who ran and literally like 2 minutes ago, I was watching his event in Wisconsin, was talking about how his predecessor in this role, Joe Biden, was always asleep. And as Heilman always says, you know, everything's a confession with this guy, and he's very sleepy on the job. The reason the White House obviously is quite sensitive about this versus everything else is that they've created this public perception of him as this kind of raging bull who's just going to steamroll his opponents, who never tires of energy. And from all we know is he is up at crazy hours at night. He has a doom scrolling habit, obviously, because he posts at all odd hours. But maybe that's the problem, is that he's not sort of getting the actual rest that you probably need. And it's creating these optically confusing moments and politically problematic ones, which is why the White House reacts so violently against anyone who points it out.
There are questions about his health. He goes up to Walter Reed a lot. Here's Dr. Oz responding to a question about that.
If the president's in such perfect health, why does he keep coming back in for checkups?
I think he likes the results. He does really well. He aces the test every single day, and I do actually believe that he is curious to make sure everything is going in the right direction. He's a very meticulous person in so many ways that are often underappreciated.
He aces the test every single day. Why is he taking the test? What test is he taking every single day?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What test is he taking, and do we actually even believe the results when they're reported? I'm looking at the images that you're showing, and I'm watching him in the Oval Office with those young kids. If those kids were dozing off in class the way he is in the Oval Office.
Child Protective Services gets called. Yeah, I mean, it's like first a note home, and then does your kid not have a place to sleep? It's serious.
And
serious.
As a Gen Xer, probably paddled, right? But can't do that anymore. But no child could go to class without a teacher or a parent intervening if they're behaving that way. But yet we're giving, at least a good chunk of this country is giving the president free rein to behave that way in front of others with control of the bureaucracy in the way that he has it. And yeah, I remember all of last year when a lot of the same kind of language was thrown at Joe Biden, and lamented the fact that so many Democrats were so quick to engage in the same kind of language about their own president. And we see how that turned out. And I'm not saying that it wasn't warranted, but if it was warranted then, it is absolutely warranted now. In an earlier segment, someone talked about Congress doing their job. Congress is watching this, let alone the people that are in the Oval Office that work directly for him. But Congress is watching this and just letting him do whatever that he wants to do. He is solely in, whatever the polling's saying, he is still solely in control of his party. He may not have appeal outside of that, but he's still in control of his party. And they will continue to cede control to him, even as they watch him be Mr. Melatonin all day.
Breaking news. This is just coming in. More election data just came in from California. And in the governor's race, the Associated Press is now projecting that former Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra will advance to the general election. At this point, it is still unclear who Becerra will face off against. Trailing behind him are Republican Steve Hilton and Democrat Tom Steyer. At this point, there is not enough election data that has come in to make that call, but we will be monitoring it. Okay, what do y'all want to take first? Well, California or Platinum?
I know they're both really good stories. I'll do Platinum real quick from my estimation. I think the Democrats need to tread very carefully here in going after this seat. A primary is one thing. You have voters out there in the primary who's like, oh, this is my guy. It's a shame people are going after him. But in that general election are independent and Republicans, center right, center left. And I don't know if people have fully gauged how they're reading the storyline with Mr. Plattner. I mean, Susan Collins, say what you may about her, has not had to carry that kind of baggage in any election cycle.
Well, no, she has the baggage of her votes, which are a different type of baggage. But when you say they should go gently, you mean in terms of how much money they put into this race as a party?
I mean, just how far they think they're going to be able to go. Because here's the problem. I remember a Senate race some time ago in which the Democrats were very clear about, Al Franken. And they set a very, very high bar. And now it seems that bar has changed. And I'm just curious about how voters read that. But that's just me.
I am someone that believes that the whole conversation over the past couple of years has lacked the nuance necessary to have real conversations. But I'll say this about what Michael is saying about Graham Plattner. Usually what happens is these Democrats, a scandal befalls or something, one could argue, regardless if you think it's large or small, something happens, and then it is the Democratic leadership, not necessarily the voters, but it's the leadership that says you have to step down, you are out of this race, or we're no longer supporting you. I give you Eric Swalwell, okay? The reason he is out of that, he came out of that race, that governor's race in California, was not because the voters said they didn't want him. A lot of Democrats came to him and said he was a distraction, and people left him by the political wayside in the streets, and one could argue rightfully so. But the voters didn't get a chance to weigh in. And so I think what is interesting to me about what is happening in this case of Graham Plattner, and I'm someone that believes, his interview was interesting last night. I think that strongly disputes is not a clear denial, but he gave a clear denial about the physicality accusations when he was speaking to our colleague Chris Hayes. But what's happening in Maine now is that Democrats are not doing what they usually do. Now they are actually thinking about power. And you don't see a lot of people running to say, okay, yeah, Janet Mills, she's still on the ballot. What can we do, Governor? Even Kristen Gillibrand, who heads up the DSCC, the arm that helps elect Democrats to the Senate, is like, we're still doing Maine. So they're making a gamble. We'll see on Tuesday what the voters have to say.
I want to take you for a minute to a truly beautiful place I just learned about, in fact. It's called Sazan. It's a small island off the coast of Albania, covering about 2 square miles. On a nice day, you can even see it from the heel in Italy's boot. And it is a sight. Clear blue water, sandy beaches, rocky cliffs, rainforests, even a few majestic peaks, and 40 miles of hiking trails. The island's location and climate make it quite unique. It explodes with a diversity of animal and plant life that you simply cannot find anywhere else. It's almost untouched by people, and to keep it that way, Albania designated the beaches and the waters around Sazan as a maritime national park in 2010. The mainland coast across from the island is one of the last wild river deltas in all of Europe. It's also protected under law. Now, a small number of mostly local tourists travel out to see the flamingos and the pelicans. There are loggerhead turtles and monk seals, and dozens more endangered species, according to local naturalists. Back in 2021, Sazan Island was discovered by a pair of seafaring explorers who would ultimately claim it as their own.
I'm working on an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch. Correct.
Well, it's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean. We were on a friend's boat and we stopped for a swim. Effectively, that's how we found it. We swam to the island. We went on a hike barefoot all the way up to the top, and we were just captivated. And it stayed with us ever since. And over the course of many years, we developed the opportunity to help realize its potential and transform it, but with a lot of restraint and care, because the land is so beautiful that really the architecture has to be fully integrated into it, almost rise from it. It's not even a business for me, despite the scale of it. We not only the island, but we have 5 miles of beachfront directly across from the island, this beautiful peninsula with a lagoon on one side, the ocean on the other, beautiful white sand beaches. For me, it feels more like a challenge than anything else. The culmination of all of my experience in real estate, all of my travel.
It's so beautiful, isn't it? Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka, discovered that island. She fell in love with it. She's not the only one. Her husband, Jared Kushner, told The Guardian last year that he, too, was left speechless when he first saw Sazan. Quote, "I was just very surprised that something like that existed in the middle of the Mediterranean and hadn't been developed." So the billionaire members of Donald Trump's family thought, why shouldn't we develop it? Tastefully, of course.
So these are actually just internal early renderings. So we're in the process of doing the master planning now. But
this is beautiful.
This is an early vision. Yeah, it's going to be extraordinary.
Here is that extraordinary vision in action, according to videos posted by local activists. Bulldozers, dump trucks, and razor wire are already ripping up the mainland coastline. And it is government-protected land. Again, it is against the law to develop there, unless the Albanian government changed its mind for some reason. Well, Just a few weeks after Donald Trump won the 2024 election, the government of Albania overrode its own environmental laws and greenlit the Kushners to develop the coastline and a chunk of Sazan Island with hotels, apartments, villas, and a marina. Kushner's firm has said the plan is to build a 5-star eco-resort community in the island and to be, quote, and I quote here, faithful and considerate of the environment. The whole project is through Kushner's private equity company, which is, of course, flush with billions of dollars from Saudi Arabia and other Middle East sovereign wealth funds, money that was invested with him after he left the White House the first time. Do you remember those were the ones he was soliciting while also advising the president on Middle East diplomacy? On Thursday, Albania's prime minister defended the deal in Trump-like terms.
There is not such a thing like a Trump family Ireland. There is not such a thing like the family of the American president taking over protected areas where flamingos will be killed by them. The project is not yet there. The environmental impact is being worked. You understand? And let me finish.
Go ahead.
Let me finish. What is this? What's wrong with you?
Go ahead.
Let me finish.
There's no need to be disrespectful. I'm asking you, go ahead, Prime Minister. Finish your thought.
You please let me finish, because you brought Politico and you said there is anti-corruption
Go ahead. I'm letting you finish.
It's fake news.
Endemic corruption is fake news in Albania, says the Albanian prime minister. His office has also said the country should be proud that such a renowned American entrepreneur shows his interest in investing in Albania. Many Albanians disagree. For almost a week now, thousands of people have been gathering in the streets across Albania, clashing with police to protest this giveaway to the Trumps, to Jared and Ivanka, by one of the poorest countries in Europe. To them, it's more of the kind of cronyism that people in the post-communist bloc have been fighting for decades. But now, instead of Moscow, the stench of that corruption is wafting in from the inner circle of a president that has already profited off his position to the tune of billions of dollars. And this isn't a mere crypto scam or an AI bubble investment. It is a land grab. It is a physical theft of a place that's so brazen and entitled it could only be done by colonial conquistadors or by the family of Donald Trump.
Earlier today, Donald Trump was in Wisconsin for a special roundtable with farmers. There was an enormous banner that read, "Fighting for American Farmers." Trump was flanked by 2 big John Deere tractors, the kind of optics that politicians love. But very quickly, it became clear that Trump wasn't all that interested in talking about what American farmers need. This is what his mind was on instead.
Washington, D.C. was not properly managed or kept. We had 22 fountains. None of them worked. Look at it. Can anybody see that? That's before. Then we had the reflecting pond, 2,500 feet. So that's the pond. If we're standing up, here's your Sears Tower, Empire State Building, World Trade Center.
It's a pool. It's a reflecting pool. Stop saying pond. Serious question. Does Donald Trump have any idea that he was in Wisconsin? Because right now across this country, Trump's tariffs and the rising cost of diesel and fertilizer, thanks to his war with Iran, are making it hard for farms to survive. But hey, if the pond, not the pool, stands up, it's bigger than the Sears Tower. Before that event, MS Now reporter Alex Tabbitt spoke with the president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, who happens to be a dairy farmer himself, about how Trump's policies are having an impact on his bottom line.
If you could pick one word to describe how it feels to be a farmer right now in America, what would that one word be?
Frustrated. And number one, because most of this situations have been caused by the administration's actions. Certainly understand the America First approach. That's what we all hope for. But in reality, are we putting America first when we're putting ourselves at a market disadvantage overnight? We can't continue this process. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see farmers, family farmers especially, go out of business on a regular basis.
Trump isn't just making life harder for Wisconsin farmers. He's making it harder for Republicans who represent those farmers. Case in point, Congressman Derek Van Orden, a big supporter of Trump, who's now defending his seat in a swing district covered in farmland. Looks like he may have some trouble doing so. Joining me now is Rebecca Cook, Democratic candidate who is trying to unseat Congressman Van Orden in Wisconsin's 3rd district. Rebecca, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, you grew up in a farm environment. I think you were a 4-H participant. Let's just explain to people what it's like to be a family farmer right now. A remarkable percentage of family farms are going bankrupt. In many cases, they're small businesses, so they're reliant on subsidies for health care and rural hospitals. They are asset heavy. You have to buy stuff. You got to buy a harvester or a combine. You could be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million. Your prices are dependent on a market. You got nowhere to go if things go wrong. And that's without talking about climate and having a bad crop year or getting some kind of disease or pest.
Right. Farmers are getting squeezed really at every turn. I grew up in this district on a dairy farm, actually in Chippewa County, where Trump was today. Our family had to sell our cows because of the price of milk. It wasn't high enough. It was like go big or go home, which was tough. Our family has had a farm in this district for 150 years. And now I think more than ever, farmers have always been squeezed. It kind of almost doesn't matter who's in power, but especially under the Trump administration, the tariffs, especially reciprocal tariffs, and how they've squeezed our soybean farmers, our cranberry growers in this district. And then you add into the war in Iran, which nobody voted for. Like Darren Von Ruden said, folks voted for an America First agenda. They didn't vote for another foreign war that is increasing the price of diesel, that is increasing fertilizer prices. And then finally, healthcare. When I was growing up, we didn't have health insurance. If my mom got a job off the farm that allowed us to have it, it was great. And so when the Affordable Care Act was passed, many people got insurance for the first time. And so the failure recently by Congress to expand the ACA tax credit premiums have really hurt farmers too. People have been seeing their premiums increase from $400 to $1,800 a month, and that's just something that people can't afford. So really at every turn, between tariffs, between these healthcare costs, between the war in Iran, Trump is not delivering for rural America, and Derek Van Orden has voted lockstep with this administration.
You talked about soybeans. In Trump 1.0, there was this fight with China. China retaliated and put tariffs on American soybeans. America was the largest supplier of soybeans to China. They then developed a market in Brazil. So America never got all that soybean business back, even when those tariffs were settled. And the net result is that we ended up subsidizing farmers. The farmers didn't want a subsidy. They just wanted to sell their damn soybeans. But we ended up giving billions of dollars in subsidies to farmers. And then a whole bunch of those farmers thought that Donald Trump saved them because he got them the subsidies for a problem that didn't exist in the first place.
Let me tell you that farmers are proud people. They are not looking for government handouts. And so I think this really flies in the face when Trump enacts these tariffs that nobody asked for, right? And in a reciprocal way, it damages trade relationships and our export markets. And then he's offering money back on the back end. Again, farmers don't want handouts. They want a stable marketplace to be able to sell their goods to the world. And so this is really a slap in the face to rural America, really at every end. And Derek Van Orden is complicit in it. In this district, RFK Jr. was here on Monday, our healthcare secretary, who didn't talk about the big issues that we have with healthcare here in this region. We've seen rural hospitals close. Again, I talked a little bit about the tax credit premiums not being expanded. And so it's really frustrating to have people that you think are going to be your advocates at the federal level, folks like RFK Jr., the President of the United States, come here to say all of these things that they're doing to better the lives of working farm families, and it's actually the opposite. And I think people can see right through that, that it's clear they're here to score political points, to try to keep their House majority and to keep people like Derek Van Orden in Congress. And I think people are smarter than that. And I think they're going to go to make that known in November and vote for somebody like myself that has lived those experiences, is going to fight like hell for working farm families across this district. And if you want to support what we're doing, not just to flip this seat, but to win back the House, visit cook4wisconsin.com to support my race.
Rebecca, good to talk to you. Thank you, as always, for making time to be with us. Rebecca Cook.
The Trump DOJ making the kind of autocratic claims that have to be taken seriously when it's not just Donald Trump musing between dozing off at meetings, but actually your government, your tax dollars. They're defending the billion-dollar ballroom. And now DOJ lawyers, who, again, work for you, they're not Trump's personal lawyers, even though he put his former personal lawyer atop the DOJ right now. They say he could destroy any national monument without Congress, without the public. This is all on tape. DOJ telling a judge, if Trump wants, he could bulldoze the Statue of Liberty and no one can do anything about it.
The government decided to move very quickly and bulldoze the Statue of Liberty, the people whose ancestors, that was the first thing they saw coming to this country. But the government moved too fast. Nothing can be done.
I think that's right, yes.
That's the kind of question a judge poses to test the outer limits. And sometimes you pick something so extreme that a lawyer, in this case a lawyer for the government, but any lawyer who is supposed to argue zealously but within the law and the facts might say, well, no, not that far, Your Honor. Certainly there are some limits here, even if we claim to do whatever we want with a ballroom. Not here, though. The DOJ making its version of Donald Trump's infamous claim that he could shoot anyone on Fifth Avenue. Here they could proverbially shoot or eliminate Lady Liberty herself. The overtones, the symbolism being quite obvious. But let's check how this really works. The Federal Appeals Court panel was skeptical about those arguments. So the fact that the DOJ said them does not mean they're true or legal, something we've all gotten quite accustomed to lately. The symbolism is striking. Why this DOJ lawyer would want to jump in and claim that you could actually destroy this symbol, this beacon of freedom that on our best days we celebrate and people around the world look to as America. In fact, to pick a modern example, if you type America into your text message, you'll usually get suggestions of the American flag and Lady Liberty herself. That's how synonymous this is. So the symbolism of saying you can destroy it and there's nothing we could do about it is telling. As for the ballroom, a watchdog group says corruption is rampant. Over half of the donors have already received or increased getting government contracts for over $50 billion. The White House says these are fake conflicts of interest and everything was just going on anyway. But the numbers, the receipts suggest a kind of pay for play. And again, that's at the cost of the taxpayer. If they give a small amount of money for some cause Trump wants and then get way more taxpayer money in return, money they might not have otherwise gotten, you're footing the bill. We also have late-breaking Friday news here coming out of, again, an embattled DOJ. In a raft of lawsuits challenging the criminal fund, the DOJ has been on defense. Indeed, that MAGA criminal fund has already been paused, subject to further review. Congress may also just cancel it entirely. They've been on the ropes. Now, you might recall that Todd Blanche, the acting AG, told Congress that he wouldn't put it in writing, but the fund is over, not going forward. Here, you have this argument in court where they say it's not going forward. Now, if you look at me here and say, okay, kind of matches up, what's the big deal? Well, what's striking is they're not dropping out. They're not dropping the case and agreeing to just end the fund completely. So we're going to keep a close eye on what happens, although they're clearly in a type of retreat. But second, the DOJ lawyers tonight, this just crossed the wires here within the last few hours, are doing exactly what Todd Blanche said he wouldn't do. He's in charge of the DOJ, but whether he's actually meaningfully in charge, well, that's one of the questions that gets raised when this happens, because he made a big point of saying he wouldn't put the end of the fund in writing.
You established it in writing, so it just makes sense to rescind it in writing. I think a lot of Americans, both sides of the aisle, are concerned about it, and it would restore a lot of trust about this issue.
Okay, I'm not committing to doing anything in writing.
Not committing.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'll take it under advisement.
Not committed to put in writing, even though he's doing something that actually, in a way, is usually bigger than writing when you're a cabinet official or acting official and you're testifying to Congress. But he drew that line this week, and tonight we can report what I showed you briefly on the screen, that they have put it in writing. They say it's not going forward, while they also are still defending aspects of what they claim is their power to do this. Whether the courts and Congress ultimately agree is the question, because Statue of Liberty claims or not, we still live in a democracy. The president and his lawyers do not get to do everything they want unilaterally. And if that includes giving money to criminals who beat up police or musing about the power to destroy the Statue of Liberty, you also have to ask, why would they want to do those things in the first place? I want to bring in our Friday night heavy hitters, Emily Bazelon from the New York Times Magazine and Juanita Tolliver, host of the podcast Archival, also an MS Now analyst. Emily, what do you think of the Statue of Liberty thing, which is sort of symbolic, but also maybe not, and the sort of double talk but partial retreat we're seeing in this new DOJ filing?
Well, I think if the Justice Department lawyer who said, yes, we can destroy the Statue of Liberty, had any choice, he would have said no, because it's obviously makes the government seem like they are willing to be reckless and are claiming the power to destroy any piece of architecture in the country. I think the reason he felt that he couldn't say no is that the government has already destroyed the East Wing of the White House. And so in order to justify that and to say that there's no remedy for that, he felt that he had to claim that the government has this limitless power. So that's my answer to the first part of your question. I think the fund is confusing. You know, do they mean that they're really not going to do it now that they've said so in court? Did Blanche think ahead before he said, no, I won't put this in writing? Or was he just feeling defiant because that's the general posture when Trump appointees testify before Congress? It's really hard to tell. It's very unpopular. Other than Trump saying the other day that he loved it, they seem to be ready to let go of it, but also not quite.
Yeah. Juanita, I don't know how much you listen to Future Hendricks, Atlanta's toxic king.
Come on with it,
but,
Ari.
you know, well, very simply, in an attitude that can come off as arrogant, that can bring you back down to earth, he always used to say, you do what you want when you pop it. And he meant he could get away with anything. And, you know, to compare this legal claim that the DOJ is making to a kind of more nefarious gangster energy, I don't think is a stretch. You can't just do anything and everything you want, even if you think you have quote unquote power. And so I wonder about how, you know, what you think this reveals, not only legally, but politically, because riding high, January after the election, Doge and all that stuff, you know, everybody was a little scattered. They don't have that kind of power now, and they seem to be alienating these judges with these claims.
Because Donald Trump doesn't care about what the public thinks, Ari. As Emily pointed out, these are highly unpopular moves. A majority of the country opposes this ballroom. Majority of the country opposes the arch. A majority of the country does, or 2/3 of the country don't want Donald Trump's name on money. All things that he has been pushing forward. And when it comes to the courts, I think the signal there is, I don't care what you say. I'll take you to Real Housewives land. Go with me, Ari, because it's giving Sheree Whitfield's "Who's Gonna Check Me?" And another moment from the hearing today that caught my attention was the judge asked, so no court, this court, the Supreme Court, no court can stop this process is what you're saying to me. And the DOJ attorney said yes. And that translates to the Trump administration saying, who is going to stop us? And I think it falls in line with the trend of destruction across institutions. Let's move beyond architecture. Go back to dismantling and hollowing out full agencies. USAID, defunct. Department of Education, hollowed out. Go back to Elon Musk and Doge running rampant, gaining access to U.S. taxpayers' personal data and information, going after court battle after court battle from agency to agency to try to stop their movements. This is the play of the Donald Trump administration, Ari.
Yeah. Juanita, Steve Bannon himself looks at all this as losing the midterms in the Senate, risking basically losses that weren't automatic. We know Trump's unpopular, but the congressional races in the Senate cycle is not just a national vote. So the Republicans had some built-in advantages. And even with that, here's what Bannon is saying.
We're going to lose the Senate in the fall anyway. No grassroots leader, none of the grassroots phalanx, the hoplites. Nobody's excited about going door to door and doing voter engagement.
Juanita?
And that's the core of campaigning, Ari. I think it's also important to emphasize why nobody's excited to go door to door, because Republicans have nothing to show their constituents, Ari. What is the message going to be on the doors from congressional Republicans who have done nothing to rein in Trump's tariffs, who have done next to nothing up until this week to rein in war powers in Iran, which have, we know, negatively impacted people in their wallets, which Donald Trump has expressly said he does not care about. So when you have nothing to sell to people, no vision of the future, of course.
Work is now underway at the Kennedy Center to scrub all references to President Trump's name after a judge ruled that the building's rebrand was illegal. Staffers were ordered to immediately take Trump's name off of social media accounts, email signatures, and other documents, and they have until June 12th to take his name off the building. Joining me now, Democratic Congresswoman from Ohio, Joyce Beatty. She's an ex officio member of the Kennedy Center board who has been fighting the Trump administration over the name change from the beginning. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us. Once Trump's name comes off the building, do you think that the president will move on from the Kennedy Center and focus on his other projects around D.C., like the ballroom and the arch, or do you see him sticking to this?
Well, he's made several statements, as you know. He has said that he was done. He wanted to give the Kennedy Center back to the Congress, and certainly we would welcome that. As a matter of fact, to that point, we filed today another motion to ask the judge to make sure that by June the 12th, that there is a plan that we can continue to proceed with keeping it open. So we're very hopeful. We're moving along. We're working with his team, his lawyers, to make sure that we remove that from the website and from all correspondence. And again, that's by June the 12th. Judge Cooper was very clear. This was unlawful, and that's what this is all about, that it was an unlawful gesture by Donald Trump and those board members that agreed to this. So we are moving on the rule of law to make sure that we correct it. And let me just say, we're getting calls from all over the country about how excited people are that we're standing up, not only for the rule of law, but for this living memorial to John F. Kennedy.
What's the sense that you're getting among staffers after the judge's ruling?
Well, I'm getting the sense that people want to get back to business as usual. They want to make sure that people like the National Symphony comes back to the Kennedy Center. They want to make sure that artists, performing artists, and families, this was all about a fight for artists and families and the rule of law. So we are very excited and we're very hopeful. We are meeting to make sure that we can do all the due diligence that we need to do. We are hoping that the board will function as a board should function. We also know that there are things that we need to do to restore the Kennedy Center. We're not being naive. We had a plan that we did. We brought in experts to look at it, and we now know that we can make those changes and keep the Kennedy Center open.
So you mentioned the National Symphony Orchestra. It's been thrown into a state of limbo. They have said that they've been rendered helpless to plan for their season because the Kennedy Center has not approved their budget yet. How does the center now move forward from this and ensure that the performing arts are preserved?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of our top priorities. It will be that hopefully when we look at the June 12th plan of action, that it will talk about performances like the National Symphony Orchestra, that we will be able to get a budget and a plan together. We know that the Congress has allocated $250-some million for us to proceed with restoring the Kennedy Center, and we are hopeful that donors will step up now that they know we're moving ahead and performers will come back. And so I think there'll be a lot of movement and a lot of people who will be thrilled to come back. The Kennedy family is excited that we're able to move on. And I am very hopeful as I continue to talk with them that they will be of help to us.
The president, as you alluded to, has been planning to close down the center for 2 years for renovation, but also that was blocked by the judge's order. So I understand that there's probably a lot of logistics in trying to put these performances back on the calendar. How complicated is that? And when do you think we'll see performances?
I do think that it's going to take some time. I don't have an answer today, but I can tell you that people are making phone calls, people are coming together. So we're taking it one step at a time. The biggest thing was to remove the name so people would come back because it was unlawful. The second is to get the declaration, the motion we filed today, that by June the 12th, we'll be able to put a plan together with those who are engaged with the Kennedy Center. So we're taking it step by step, but it has been a great victory, I would like to say. And there's so many people who are on our side that have called in, former donors, people who have supported it, artists. So we're going to have to sort through it. It's not an easy task. I'm not being naive, but we do have people who are wanting this to happen. And so I am very confident that we will continue to work together with anyone who wants to work with us.
Before you go, I just wanted to ask you about America's 250th anniversary celebration. You know, 6 musical guests have dropped out of performing, saying that these events have just become too politicized. President Trump has promised a rally to end all rallies, featuring himself, essentially. How do we get back to a place in this country where we can celebrate America's birthday in a bipartisan fashion and use the performing arts to do that?
I'm calling on people, Democrats and Republicans, to have the strength to take our country back, to make sure that we are celebrating just in a few months, 250 years. That's something that should not be partisan because we were all in this together. We had to fight to make sure that we could even have our existence. So I think that if we can really look at people wanting to make sure that if there's one thing we should be able to stand together on, it should be our own existence for 250 years. So I think there'll be more to come on that. Absolutely. And thank you in the media for calling that out. We're going to ask corporate America, labor, religious groups, for everybody to come together for our 250-year celebration.
It is quite a milestone, and we should all celebrate it. Congresswoman
Yes.
Joyce Beatty, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.